Well, hi there, everybody. It is your host of the Guns Magazine podcast, Brent Wheat, and this is a very special edition. This is a midweek edition of the Guns Magazine podcast, and it is because of current events, which is Hurricane Ian. And we were talking about it earlier. We're recording this Monday afternoon. Hurricane Ian is supposed to hit slam Florida sometime Wednesday, and we get a lot of questions about things like, well, what should I do with my guns and which gun should I buy? And, you know, we're all kind of vested in that. I've got family down there. We've got several of our coworkers from FMG Publications that live in the area also. So we're going to be watching that and hoping everybody comes out all right. But today joining me are special guests, Tom McHale, the editor of American Handgunner magazine, and Ashley McGee. McGee. Did I say this is live without a net? Ashley, we know your name. It's just something, we have a mental block against it or something. So anyway, guys, thank you for joining me. You both live in the Charleston, South Carolina area, and you are hurricane experts. Well, in the sense of...
Yeah, why are you here?
We get hurricanes tornadoes.
In Indiana or where...
Well, a tornado is like a hurricane. It's just much smaller and much more violent. So we rely on the odds to, survive the tornadoes up here. But no, Tom lived in Florida for a couple of decades, and both of you have been through hurricanes. So we thought we would just make a very special, quick publication Guns Magazine podcast. And like I said, this is live without a net. So unless Tom says one of the big 7 words, we're not going to edit anything. We're going to throw this straight up online. So you'll be able to listen to us normal Guns Magazine podcast channels. Plus we'll be on FMG Publications YouTube channel. So anyway, we're going to talk about some stuff you need to be thinking about. So, okay, we'll start with Tom. It's basically 2 days before the hurricane hits, Hurricane Ian, as I said. You think everybody's got plenty of time? They haven't got that gun yet. They probably need to run out and get that, right?
Well, I'm thinking 2 days before, that's when we put our lawn chairs up on the roof.
Yeah.
You got to get that set up because you do have to staple them down to the roof. You know?
This is true. And put your seatbelts on, right?
But, put your seatbelts on. Well, I don't know about getting a gun 2 days in advance. 2 days in advance is when you have all the lines at the grocery store for water and toilet paper and canned food, right? Well, and plywood.
And I will also
you have all the people buying bread and milk. You know, you got to get those perishables before a hurricane.
And eggs.
That's
right.
So
you can make the hurricane French toast, or we call it snowstorm French toast up here.
Those shelves will be wiped. You got to get those perishables before a natural disaster.
Well, I already heard from my family the shelves were wiped about last Thursday. So, again, 2 days before, if you haven't got it, I'm sorry about your luck. But in terms of guns, I believe the state of Florida, I can't remember, it's either a 3 or a 5 or 7 day waiting period. So you're out of luck anyway. But that was the point I wanted to make is 2 days before a hurricane, a day before a hurricane is not the time to decide I may need a firearm to protect my family.
So let's assume you've got one. There are lots of other things that you need to take care of well in advance.
Yes.
Right. Maybe we should probably talk about a couple of those things.
I think so.
Okay, I'll start. Ashley,
you'll start since you've been there, done that. Inspired.
Yeah. So, I mean, if you have an evacuation order wherever you live, that's something to plan for, right? So one of those nice things to do in advance is to figure out what states you're going to be driving through or to, do a quick printout of their carry laws, because some of the most radically diverse and different laws are those with respect to transporting firearms in a car.
Yep.
And there's one set of laws and regulations. If you have a permit recognized in that state, there are different regulations if you don't have a permit recognized in that state. I mean, it's crazy. They're all over the map. Some states you got to have it in the trunk and unloaded. Other states you can have it in the glove box. Other states you have to have it on the seat or dashboard in a visible position. I mean, it's literally all over the map. So you want to figure that out well in advance.
And then also where you're staying, because there are different policies if you're going to be in a hotel, even, whether you are allowed to have it in said hotel or if you're walking through a hotel bar / lobby area, you could find yourself in violation of your permit, or even just what you need to do to transport it from your car to your hotel room.
Which brings up another good preparation point, and that would be a portable lockbox. You don't know where you're going to be, how you're going to be situated. So have some way to secure your firearm. You're ultimately responsible for it at all times, even when it's not in your possession. So have a way to lock that thing up, whether it's in the hotel room or a car, if need be. Don't store it in there when you're not present, but always have a lockbox.
Now, I know, Tom, you're the guy that evacuates only when the helicopter plucks you off the roof. But, okay, what about long guns? We've talked about, maybe your handgun you're carrying for personal protection. What about long guns? Because, we'll never have to evacuate where I live, at least not for weather. But it would take me a little while to load the car with certain long guns. I mean, seriously, what do you guys do? Do you leave them behind and trust in luck, or what do you do?
I've actually thought about this, and I have not had to evacuate yet. I would if there was a serious thing coming right at us. And Ashley and I were talking earlier about our state is one of the ones they've gotten pretty good at unidirectional evacuation, meaning all the roads, all the lanes, all are going out. And, they have police officers at the exits and blocking off things so that that's safe. So there's really not a problem getting away. The problem becomes a weight and volume logistics situation. What do you bring? You're talking, you got people, you got food, all the perishables that Ashley recommended you buy 2 weeks at a time. So they're still good and fresh, right? You got that, you got water, you got gas, may have gas, who knows? You can't take that much with you in a car when you really start thinking about it. So
yep,
my long guns are likely staying at home. Ashley,
and I guess this is where I come in. So I've got 2 young kids. We've also got a dog. So, it may be a situation where we decide to drive 2 vehicles to get out of here just to have a little extra room. We have a full-size truck and then a small mid-size-ish SUV. But still, there's only so much that you can bring with you. We left a few years ago for a hurricane because at the time it was looking a little iffy. And then also, my youngest was an infant. So it's like, do we really want to be stuck here in South Carolina? I think it was late September, early October. So it was still, 105 degrees. Do we want to potentially be without power for an extended period of time with an infant? The answer to that was no. So one of the first things that I did, because we stay pretty prepared in terms of supplies, and we have them in the garage in containers where a lot of it we can just grab and go. So I took the time to basically catalog our firearms collection by jotting down makes, models, serial numbers. I took photos of everything just because we were having to leave a lot of those behind. There was just no way possible that we would be able to put that, even if we were taking 2 vehicles that time.
Well, and this is a great point to bring up the idea that an insurance will cover any damages, right? This could be a shocker for some folks. Talk about that.
Yeah. So prepping for this podcast, I took a few minutes and I need to look at my specific policy because now it's been brought to my attention that we may need to invest in a specific policy for our guns because most policies are going to provide limited coverage for guns and rifles, but that limited coverage is somewhere to the tune of $2,500. Which
or less. A lot of them are less than that.
Or less. And some of them have, specifications where it's only up to $500 for a single gun with a max of say $2,500 or whatever it is for all the guns combined. So it's important to look at your policy ahead of time, make adjustments if you need to. The other thing that I came across was that you only have coverage if it's a covered peril. So, in Tom and I's case, if you're not in a flood zone where you're required to have separate flood insurance, sure, there was a hurricane, but if the damage to your home was caused by a flood, it doesn't matter if you don't have that flood insurance rider on your policy, or, if you don't have earthquake insurance, which is something that's not required here.
Things to think about. Now, how do you guys carry? I assume you carry paper copies of your stuff. I had a friend tell me that they do all that. They have a file of stuff they can grab and go, but they also try to keep it updated online. There's a lot of, cloud, and you can secure it various ways, passwords, but it's not a bad idea to have that and important information such as phone numbers somewhere where you can access them in case paper gets wet.
Yeah, I keep a binder that has all of that information printed out, and I keep it in our fireproof safe. That way I can just grab that whenever we go to evacuate. And it has everything from like account numbers for every account that we have, plus all the, serial numbers that I mentioned and everything. But then I do have it, everything backed up on an external hard drive. So it's saved there. And then also I do have it stored on a cloud. Some people may be weary of that because, the cloud, where does it go? Who has access to it? Yada, yada, yada. But for me, that was something that, I was okay with doing.
Yeah, I do a similar thing. I'm electronic for all that. But I have, stuff synced between my laptop, my phone, and cloud. So 2 out of those 3 things can go away, and I've still got all that information, passwords, and that may have a little more unique situation with the guns because by nature of what we do, there's a lot of guns coming and going, loaner guns and samples and things like that. So every time one comes into my house, when I pick one up at the local dealer, I log it, right away. I've got a little app that I built, serial number, model number, date, value, all that stuff. And then I've got pictures as well. So, it's important to have all that stuff for a lot of reasons. One, the insurance claims, if you have such a policy that allows that, like Ashley said, but also, damage, theft, confiscation. Should we talk about New Orleans and Katrina?
Yes.
That's not something you necessarily plan on, even if you don't evacuate.
Well, let's talk about that. And you guys live currently in a fairly free state with Governor DeSantis, but things can always change. And we've already had this happen in New Orleans with the gun confiscations, which were later ruled unconstitutional. But, when you got 4 or 5 armed people standing at your door saying, give us your guns, that's not really the time to contest the issue. But either one of you, thoughts on that whole situation?
I'm throwing up in my mouth a little bit right now because it's the more you read about that situation, it was just absolutely horrible. You think, oh, okay, that could never happen in the United States, but literally, you had officers and now I will say local PD, regional groups, but you also had a lot of people from other parts of the country, literally going around knocking on doors, just confiscating firearms from normal citizens. And,
it was like alphabet soup of law enforcement. You had all the acronyms for there.
And what happened was the good stuff kind of disappeared, and the cheap stuff got literally thrown in piles in an unclimate controlled warehouse. Mm-hmm. So on paper, you'll get it back after the storm. Years later, no one got anything back, and you've got this giant pile of rust. A rust pile accumulating in some humid warehouse somewhere. So all of your property is essentially destroyed at that point. Yeah. Years down the road. So you want your records.
And we can't give you advice on how to deal with that situation other than you, of course, want to cooperate. There's no point in getting in a fight because you will lose. But, how you answer their questions, I guess that's up to you. But I was just sitting here thinking, I can see standing at the front door. Well, yeah, I know that I've got guns, but I want a hand receipt for all those. I'm sure that would happen, right? Right. But, this does bring up another interesting point, and I can guarantee you, assuming there's probably some damage following Hurricane Ian, you're going to see pictures of some guy standing somewhere with his shotgun, warding off the looters, even though there's no visible sign of looters. Just because there's a bad situation, I get it if you're in the middle of, what do they call that? The nonviolent protests in the big cities. And, they're literally trying to burn down your building. But I guess
mostly
what I'm trying to say, mostly peaceful. That was the term. just try to be a little circumspect. There's a time to brandish your weapon and jerk that hog leg and go to work, but be a little bit careful because, as Ashley said, there's a lot of law enforcement and not necessarily a lot of local law enforcement. And a lot of them may view even brandishing a firearm as a capital offense. So I would never say not pull your gun, but just be really careful about the time and place when you do. Wouldn't you agree?
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely. And allegedly, all the guns that they confiscated were stolen or found abandoned in homes.
Yeah.
So that is something to think about that we haven't talked about yet is, how did they classify abandoned? Was that firearms were just out and, visible or whatever? Make sure they're secured in your home, especially if you're going to have to leave them behind. And something to think about when you're talking about tropical weather is, is your safe fireproof, waterproof? Is there some kind of humidity control? All of those things, because you don't want to come back home to find that they're all, floating around.
I was going to say, I've spent a lot of time in Charleston and South Carolina, and the humidity level at some point gets to where there's small fish flying down the boulevard. It's that high. And I can only imagine it gets worse after you've had, unilateral flooding for 4 days.
Well, we model our humidity after a high school locker room shower. The communal showers in high school. That's the ideal level of humidity we've found. Yeah. So.
Well, I think the main reason folks probably are going to listen to this or watch this on YouTube is, well, what guns do I need? What guns do I need? Let's talk a little bit about that. Both of you have guns. You have multiple guns. Is there anything you do special in preparation for a hurricane? Or is it just another day with maybe more, another day in the life, maybe with a little more water than what you normally get?
I'll start. Very little different because I kind of live my life in a somewhat fashion when it comes to self-defense and defense of my family. The only thing really different that I might do if we were leaving town, besides what we've talked about, locking up, documenting all those things, is bring those extra magazines, bring that extra ammo, and that lockbox. That's something could be really nice to have on the road, not knowing where you're going to be staying or where you're going to be stuck.
Yep.
Yeah, and I would agree with that. We stay relatively prepared here just because it's, hurricane season happens every year. So you don't, eventually you're just pretty much prepared for it all the time. One thing that we do, if you've got guns strategically placed in locations throughout your home, maybe you've got, one of those things where it's concealed behind a picture frame, or you have them, one in a downstairs closet or a shotgun behind the door, whatever. Walk through your house and make sure you round those up and secure them if you're not taking them with you.
Yep. I'm a huge believer in checklists. I have them in the case of, like you said, Ashley, we always have to clear the decks after or before our grandkids come. And I think I've said this before. I put a little note on the inside of the toy box because that's always the first place they go to. And it in big red letters, firearm safety check. And on the back, it lists where all the guns are stowed so that I've told my adult kids and my wife and I both know if that sign's still there, that means we haven't cleared the guns. So we need to start doing that. So, but on the same and related note, I'm not a firm believer on the whole bug out concept because you're better prepared at home. Even if your home's got some damage, you're better prepared to survive something at home. But we also do have bug out bags, so to speak. But I've got checklists, just like you said, Ashley, that, make sure the guns are here. Did you grab the cash? Did you grab the medication? Have you done this, and this? Because speaking as a retired law enforcement officer, and you guys have been through that whole stress of worrying about hurricanes, whatever happens, when it happens, you are not thinking straight. You don't default to your highest, best mental status. You're lucky to remember your own name. And that's why I'm a big believer in I make laminated checklists, and I've got them on the side of my gun locker. I got them with my bug out bags, and just something as simple as, did you grab, you're going to grab some perishable food out of the fridge for that first 12 hours. Well, if you're in a big hurry to get out, you might forget basic stuff like that. So,
well, I do the same thing, Brian. I keep electronic versions in my phone. It's synced in my phone, computer, cloud. But a pack the car checklist for, because we will have to evacuate at some point. That's just the odds, right?
Yep.
And I tell you what I found is you can pack confidently in a fraction of the time with a pre-thought out checklist, trying to remember all this stuff on the fly. Like you said, you're scrambled, you're in a hurry. You can be very confident that you've got what you need if you're just going tick, 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 ticking off those items, throwing them in the car, get in, drive away, right? I mean, down to the point of locking your doors and however you want to do it, write it all down in advance.
Yep.
And if you have the means, have extras of things that you can just keep ready to go in a bug out bag, in a, Rubbermaid tote, whatever it is. Similar to how if you've got extra camping supplies set aside, that way you can just grab them and go. That's kind of what we do. We have a bin that's got, some non-perishables, some MREs, things like that, flashlights, batteries, like solar phone charger, external battery charger things, so that all of that is just ready to go. We don't touch it any time of the year unless we're going to check and make sure things are charged back up. But otherwise we can just grab it. And then that's where we keep the checklist of things we can't have ready ahead of time. The checklist is there so that we remember, okay, these are the things that we need to go and grab.
Yep.
I do the camping supplies thing too. I keep an extra room key for the Four Seasons Hotel, right there and ready to go in the event emergency strikes. So you and I are on exactly the same page there.
Even in crisis, you're a glamper.
Yep.
Just kindred
Prepared.
spirits.
Yeah. Yep.
Well, I think the big takeaway here is all three of us, being a prepared American is a lifestyle for us. It's not a hobby. It's not a thing we throw out there of, I'm a prepper or whatever. It's what we do. So if you have a hurricane, if you have an earthquake, if you have a, XYZ, oh, okay. Well, I was expecting something bad might happen. I'm prepared for it. If I have to defend myself, if I have to leave, if I have to stay here with no electricity, I've got a plan for that. And I've got pre-positioned supplies that are ready to go mobile. And it's just how we live. So it's kind of hard to get like really worked up about something. It's like, well, I would have already done this, and this 6 months ago. So I always get a kick. I saw it today. They always go down to Home Depot or Lowe's or whatever your particular flavor is, and you'll see a guy with a big flatbed cart, and he's got a generator, and he's got a barbecue. And I wonder if he's ever figured out how to run that generator before the wind starts.
It's funny. My years ago, my wife and I kind of had an oh duh moment, and we were rushing off to the store to buy something when a storm was coming or whatever, and we said, you know what, we need to live in such a way that we sit at home while everyone else is rushing off to the store to buy something.
Yep.
And we just started doing that. We're not preppers. We're not, you'll never find us on one of those shows, but everybody has to buy water because like Ashley said earlier, the what you really need to plan for is not having any power, maybe having contaminated water for not just a day, but a week, 2 weeks. You never know, even if you don't have to evacuate. So, we rotate through cases of bottled water. We just continuously have a pile, in the garage, X feet tall of bottled water. And we take the old stuff and throw it in the fridge and drink it while we're mowing the lawn and buy 2 more cases or whatever. And so on with other items like that, battery and non-perishable food and things like that. So it's really not hard. And I'll tell you, there is nothing more fun than sitting at home doing whatever you want to do while everyone else is running around town trying to buy the last case of water or piece of plywood or whatever the case may be. There's a comfort in that.
I was going to ask.
You'll see all those generators for sale on Facebook Marketplace.
Exactly.
You pick them up cheap.
Exactly.
Yeah, and then they'll turn around and they'll go buy another one the next time.
Yep.
There's a probable threat. You'll see them, back in line at Lowe's again because they sold it on Facebook Marketplace after the last one.
I never thought about that. If I wanted to pick up a generator sheet, I don't have a generator, I admit that, but I'm prepared for living without a generator, but I would like to have one. So
January.
Yeah.
All the Christmas bills are due. Hurricane season's over. They're all going to be for sale.
I love that idea. But back to the water thing. I've always wondered this. I don't know how it is where you guys are, but in our area, you go in like the bathroom or the kitchen and you turn these valves and fresh drinkable water comes out.
It's amazing, isn't it?
It is amazing.
And I'm like you, Brent. I don't consider myself a prepper. We don't have, a bug out vehicle and all these things. But I do actually have, speaking of the bathtub and the faucets and those sources of water that everyone seems to forget exist, we actually have a bladder that I picked up a couple years ago for the bathtub that lines it and keeps it fresh. And then it's got a little pump on it so that you can use it. And I think it was like, I don't know, $20-$30 on Amazon. And we just keep them under the bathroom sink in case we ever need it.
I've actually got one of those, and I cannot foresee a situation where I would need to store that much water, because we have surface water here in our area, but I do have like 3 methods of water purification and a means to carry said water. But if I decide that we need to store some potable water here, I've got one of those bladders, and like you said, it was $25 and it will never go bad and it'll always be there. And I hope someday when the kids are cleaning out the house and talking about what a crackpot dad was, they find that and just throw it in the trash.
Well, there are some things that people rarely think of is if you are at home and basic services are interrupted for a period of time, even unpotable water is quite handy to have for flushing toilets.
Yes.
Just saying. One of those practical considerations that.
Wow. It always got to go there, right?
Well, hey, it's legit.
No, you're correct. You're absolutely correct. Now, the final thing, because I said this was going to be a short one, and we've just got so much to talk about. We keep going, but what's the single most important supply? I know for me, and it's strictly medicinal, is substance in a bottle that can be used as a disinfectant.
Is it sterile?
Oh, it's sterile, very sterile.
Okay.
And it even has nutritional value. It's got grain, it's got spring water, B vitamins,
All the food groups.
I've never been to a hurricane party. I heard those can get quite entertaining at times. I do see you, Tom, though. I see Ashley being very, very pragmatic. But, Tom, I see you out on the deck toasting the neighbors that are panicking. Just how you doing, folks?
My rum supply is safe. So
I know.
Yeah, I was going to say, hurricane parties are a very real thing, and they are a good time. It's not unlike a normal Saturday of watching, college football all day with your neighbors and stuff. So it's a very similar situation.
Well, guys, I think we'll end it on that note. I really appreciate you talking to me literally on short notice. This came up in a meeting an hour ago, and we discussed it, and we were flying by the seat of our pants. You'll, I'm sure, notice the technical quality is not nearly what it normally is, and especially if you're watching the video on YouTube. We're just using our webcams, and Tom's in his secret lair, and Ashley has her blank white wall behind her. But
no, we can't identify her location.
Exactly. She's thousands of feet underground in the South Carolina Operational Control Center. But no, I really do appreciate you guys, because you've got more experience with hurricanes than I do. I've got, again, this is the first major hurricane that I've got family and friends really in the way of. So I'm worried about it, but I also trust, I know they've got plans. I know we've discussed this months ago. So I hope that everything is going to work out. But
I say one more thing. I'm going to interject real quick before we sign off here. We were talking a lot about insurance. We've talked about perishables, non-perishables. You mentioned nutrition. There might be some hunters listening to this call, and you guys got firearms. We talked about that. But one lesson that I did learn prior to us getting a generator, we already had plans to be out of town, but we lost power while we were away, and we have a couple of freezers in our garage, and we lost everything that was in there. And I learned that our homeowner's insurance policy had some coverage for that, and it did not count as a claim against our policy. So we were able to get reimbursed $500. Was the flat
for
rate.
Food.
We didn't have to, for food.
Huh.
We didn't have to provide any proof of what was in there. They just
you
already
didn't
knew
have
that
to
the
mail
storm was
the
there.
spoiled to them.
We didn't have to take pictures or anything like that. Whether $500 was enough to cover the processing fee of all the venison and everything that was in there, who knows? But $500 is $500. So that's something to keep in mind.
Oh.
Yeah, that's something to keep in mind if power does go out, whether you're at home or not, and you lose what's in your freezers. Look into that with your homeowner's policy.
Good job. Good
Nice.
idea. I will say my son, after Hurricane Katrina, they were part of a youth group that went down there to help clean up. And he said it was nasty and all that, but that was okay. But he said when you saw the refrigerator that had the watermarks about 3/4 of the way up, you did not want to open it. You just keep the door shut and carried it out to the street and let it go. Because if it did come open, he said you wouldn't believe what was inside.
Yeah, and Tom, I don't know if you've heard this trick about putting a container in your freezer with a quarter in it, just like a little container. And then you'll know if the thing's thawed out in there because the quarter will have, moved and
like
floating around.
Suspended in ice? Or
Makes sense.
Yeah.
That's clever.
That is
I like
very
it.
clever.
So you can just get
a
a little
glass of water with a quarter on top of the ice or something?
Yeah.
Well, I don't think you want to put glass in your
Well, not glass,
freezer
but a cup of
just a little, Tupperware container, whatever, and put a little bit of water and freeze a quarter inside, and it'll tell you if your food, that way you'll know if it partially thawed, if it fully thawed, whatever.
Great ideas. And again, I think we need to have another full edition of talking about this because, this can affect basically half the coastlines of our entire country. And I know, again, we're prepared Americans, but a lot of folks aren't, and they suddenly realize I need to find out about this stuff. So one of these days we'll all get together and we'll talk about our experiences, and I can even talk about snowstorms and, how you need to make I know. It's this white stuff that gets really cold, but you can't go anywhere. That's the problem. And then your power goes out and you don't have French toast because you didn't buy milk, eggs, and bread. So, well, anyway, guys, I really appreciate it. Tom McHale's the editor of American Handgunner, and Ashley McGee, who has some strange name that we can't ever remember, but she's our digital content manager. And they're both residents, as I said, of Charleston, South Carolina, and they have experience doing this. I would be remiss in saying the Guns Magazine podcast is sponsored by 1791 Gunleather. You can visit 1791gunleather.com. And having said that, I normally say get out there and get shooting, but I would say today, folks, if you're in the path, just take care of yourselves and keep leaning on us. We've hopefully got some good information, and we will see you after this is all over. For Guns.
And if you're listening on YouTube, make sure you leave us a comment with whatever tips and tricks that you've got that we did not cover.
Good point coming from the content manager that I didn't. So anyway, I hope you enjoyed this special edition, this unedited, live without a net edition of the Guns Magazine podcast. And we will resume our normal publication on this Friday. We'll see you then. Thanks, everybody.